All right, guys, on today's episode, we are recapping UFC Kansas City. I cannot, off the top of my head, remember which fight night this is. But anyway, UFC Kansas City, it's UFC on Fox 24. So it's not technically a fight night quote. That's a fun thing to explain to casual fans, by the way. We always talk about how we want MMA to grow, we want UFC to grow, and we want to reach casual fans. Have fun explaining the on Fox fight night and pay-per-view system. Again, we're used to it, so it's not confusing. And it's not confusing in real life either, but it's just one more thing to add to the list when you're trying to get new people into the sport. So that's my piece with it. Anyway, we are recapping UFC on Fox 24 a la UFC Kansas City with Matt Lucas, stars Profit on DraftKings, and Dave Madden. Of course, Dave Madden, the Twitter machine that Dave Madden is. He has a couple big things going on right now as well, but he's also with NorCal. So I hope you guys enjoy the episode. Let's get into it.
You've got a gun, got a big gun, you've got a gun, it's not a real.
All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of the LoudMouth MMA podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Steele. Joining me for another edition of the recap is my trusted duo, Dave Madden. Mr. Dave Madden, how's it going?
I'm back. I'm ready.
And Matthew Lucas. Mr. Matthew, how are you?
What's up, man? I'm doing well. How are you, Kyle?
I'm doing great. Let's get into this. I like it, man. This was a welcomed card. I believe. I mean, general thoughts about the card. Let's start with Dave. Just as a whole, how was the event for you?
Yeah. Well, I actually had written into the UFC to get a partial refund from UFC 210, and
yes,
I put what they sent me towards this card because it was just not worth it. You know, they're giving it to you free on Fox, and I thought it was fantastic. I was actually at an event live. While this was going on, I got to catch the Fight Pass prelims on the drive up. And then from there, I kind of went in the dark until I checked it out later. But, I mean, I didn't even get home until, almost probably 1 a.m., from the event. And I clicked it on just to kind of catch a few of the fights. And I was entertained. I sat actually and just was, enthralled in watching it. So, to be honest, I was in a haze watching, but I remember being very entertained, and I thought it was a great card, man.
Mr. Matt?
Yeah, man, I really enjoyed it. It was a lot of some premier matchups up at the top of the card and a lot of nice finishes, nice fights the whole way through. Shout out to the Anthony Smith comeback win. That was really cool earlier in the card. And then, the main event, just a lot of action fights and a lot of finishes. So for a free card on Fox, you really couldn't ask for much more.
There we go. Let's start at the top. Demetrious Johnson versus Wilson Hayes. Demetrious Johnson, of course, getting the victory, but getting the victory in a way that I think most of us were not expecting, which was an armbar. He submitted Wilson Hayes. Pretty incredible there.
Well, I think to say we weren't ready for it. DJ the guy is a different thing at the flyweight level. I mean, he probably could compete better at bantamweight. They just outweigh him so much, and those guys are just as talented. So it's hard when you're fighting guys that big to be going up. But for that size, man, he's untouchable. He's he's amazing to watch. I'm enthralled every time. I'm so amused by him. And again, maybe you're saying because Wilson Hayes is black belt. He's not supposed to get submitted by DJ, but I wasn't surprised, motherfucker.
Matt, I was surprised. Matt, were you surprised at all?
No, I mean, DJ is clearly, in my opinion, the best pound-for-pound fighter on the planet at this point, especially with John Jones been on the shelf for so long. I don't think there's any debate about that. With one more victory, it'll be almost undebatable, with him being the greatest of all time. This would be his third armbar victory in his title defense run. I think for sure he has some of the highest totals of arm bars of anybody in UFC history. So that's kind of his move, and it's just another really great feather in his cap to submit somebody who had never been submitted and was a legit black belt in Wilson Hayes. So it's another great victory for DJ. I was happy to see it.
I guess the question I have, and this is something that will be discussed on my news episode this week with Derek and Keith, which is what in the hell do you do with Demetrius Johnson? They created an entire Ultimate Fighter season around him, and you still couldn't do anything. So and Matt, we'll start with you. What do we do with Demetrius Johnson? Where do we go from here?
They're talking about this, super money fight maybe between him and Cody Garbrandt, but Cody's still got to beat T.J. Dillashaw.
Well, he needs to break. Do that. But he needs to break Silva's record too, not just tie.
Yeah, I think too. Yeah, he's got to break that record before he puts anything at risk. I'm sad that Kyoji Horiguchi is no longer in the organization. I thought that might have been a really interesting person to see have a rematch. But at this point, I think, it's Joseph Benavidez since he beat Cejudo.
Jesus.
In that fight, it's got to be Joseph Benavidez giving his third attempt, I think. And,
Dave Madden?
That or you give Tim Elliott another shot at it.
I guess. Dave?
Yeah, I think it's hard to come up with a specific contender for Demetrius. Obviously, he's cleaned house. It becomes, what does everyone else do to become, a contender to Demetrius? Why, it's always, who do we pair him? Who's proven themselves? Let the guy go play some Twitch and build up that part of his world, I guess. And the UFC should go promote him and tout him and parade him around as the most decorated fighter will be in one more fight for sure in the UFC. So, I think they should, what should they do next with him? They should put him on a pedestal and parade him around and definitely give him some spotlight and kudos. The guy's entertaining. He is funny on the interviews I hear, and I'm not a big video gamer, but the video game world is pretty viral and it's very, like the MMA world is very niche and very there's very much like a divide and groups and this and, that the video game world, I'm sure, is that on steroids, of so many people playing video games. So I don't know. I wish they would do something like that for him because he is an awesome champion and he seems like a great guy. And I like him, man. And I want to see him get the praise he deserves.
And he's such a rarity right now in this paradigm of UFC, a guy who is fighting the contenders and continuously defending his belt. And, we essentially have no champion at 145. I think Cody Garbrandt will make a pretty good bantamweight champion. Although he's a guy who, if there's a guy who's going to get obsessed with money fights and bouncing around and stuff like that, he's a prime candidate for it. Obviously, 155, you got McGregor. 170, Woodley's he's defending his belt quite a bit. I'll give him that, but God, he sure is annoying about it. And then at 185, you got Bisping, and that nonsense that it goes with. You got DC at 205. Again, we already know that situation because of John Jones. And then really you got Stipe at the top, who's the next kind of best champ quote. But that's at heavyweight. In heavyweight, that thing will change. If he defends his belt again, he almost assuredly is not going to defend it 2 times after that or another time after that because the heavyweight belt does not stay in the same place for very long, and I don't foresee it staying there much longer. So, I'm not super stoked with our champion picture right now. So we need Demetrius Johnson. We need him so badly. I hope he does not go anywhere, and I hope we can get him some legitimate contenders, so that we can continue to move that division forward. If anyone has anything to add, chime in.
Well, I saw the ratings came back for this Fox card, and the ratings came back really low. So,
of course they did.
That the general public isn't supporting him as much as they should. And it worries me because it's even further going to push a company like WME IMG into that entertainment sort of business. If the greatest fighter potentially that has ever fought in the history of the organization draws the lowest Fox numbers in history. It's just so I don't know what that's to be said about quality, but
I'm just going to take a little credit for that. Well, no, I'm just going to take a little credit for that, and I apologize to everybody. But, I wasn't active on Twitter during the event. And, it probably pulled away some of the numbers. And, well, anyways, guys, I'll be on the next card. And, yeah. So, anyways, I caught it on DVR, and I don't live tweet my DVR. So, that might have been
that would be hilarious. You're just tweeting like 18 hours later.
Yeah, and everyone's like, "Wait a minute, is he just now watching it? Like, what's happening?" It's like it's a Bellator tape delay.
Yeah. Oh.
I loved one time I saw Jonathan Snowden on Twitter. I know people are really divisive on him, and I just don't care. I don't even follow him, but I just see people's retweets of him. And anyways, he was live tweeting one time some movie he was watching from like the 80s or something. And like, anyways, it was kind of funny to like see people try to put it together. And anyways, that was it's funny like to
great.
think about doing something like that.
I watched Army of One with Nicolas Cage the other day. It was Nicolas Cage and Russell Brand. Russell Brand is God in the movie, if you're wondering. And one of the most absurd movies I've ever seen in my entire life. And I need to rewatch it and live tweet it because it's absurd. I'll live tweet it with GIFs. All right, let's move on down the card here. Rose Namajunas, my baby girl, Thug Rose. She beat Michelle Waterson, rear naked choke, second round. Before securing that choke, she pretty much brutalized Michelle Waterson. She pretty much just, in the same way with Paige Van Zandt, just kind of ate her soul a little bit until she finally sunk that choke in. And I don't know if you've watched the like up close kind of slow-mo of that choke. Wow, dude. I mean, Michelle Waterson looked like she was about to, it looks like a scene out of a horror movie. I mean, it looks like she's about to die. I mean, holy cow.
I think like Furious Fight Pics, they had some tweet where I think they actually said that, like, this is out of a horror movie. It's
nuts.
Just her veins popping out of her head.
And her eyes are fear.
Of them.
Well, and her eyes were just, I mean, it was all fear, right? Like you could see it. She was so scared and like didn't know what was happening. I mean, just insanity, just pure insanity. But I would like to take just full credit for this, as much credit as I can possibly take for this. I even in talking to Matt and I talk a lot before these cards, and Matt can vouch for me here. I mean, kind of from moment one, I was all in on Rose. And I doubled down on the podcast this past week. I wound up, of course, winning that bet. Both Sean and Mitch did come through on their ends of the bets. I appreciate it, gentlemen. They kept the word immediately, so good job, guys. But I mean, this was just a huge step up for Waterson. I mean, just a too big of a step up for her right now. The hype train was moving a little too fast. So, now we're back to where we were, and I think she'll bounce back. And I think Rose will more than likely fight Joanna after Joanna probably beats Andrade. It's a good fight, though, but I do think that she comes away with that, and I think Joanna probably will have an easier time beating Rose. So, if anything, I think we know that Joanna's going to be champion at least 2 more times because it's going to go Andrade and then Rose, and I'm pretty sure she'll get through them both. Dave, start with your opinion on this fight.
Yeah, well, the Joanna thing, number one, I love Joanna so much. She's so personable and just that cool champion. But this Andrade one, it's crazy to see Jessica in the last fight she had, just beat the shit out of that chick.
Angela Hill.
Who it was?
Angela Hill.
Who was it?
Angela Hill, I think.
Yeah, man. And it was a good back and forth, but I mean, she just was not moving when Angela hits her and just bullies her. Yes, Joanna, every time I'm like so high on her, but she just doesn't. She hasn't killed like the Jessica Penne fight and then the Carla Esparza one where she just leveled them. It was more of like she just throws these hands until Anyway, she hasn't gotten those kills. So, she breaks her hand. And so I don't know. I see what you're saying because I love to jump her like that too. I go, oh, these next two, these next three, these next. But Andrade, tough. That's so tough.
I know it
and
is.
And then Rose, man. Rose to come out and kick the face off of Fight Mom. Damn. I was not ready for that. I thought it would be some sort of scramble on the feet that would go in Rose's favor, but scramble on the ground that would go in her favor. Even though Waterson's good on the ground, just Rose is lanky and just she has these interesting attacks. But to kick her damn head off, I was blown away. That was for me going on at like 4 a.m. I haven't slept in 24 hours. I'm like, oh my God. I had trouble sleeping still. So I was amazed, man. I loved it. And, I love Rose. I think Waterson's awesome, but yeah, Rose is a killer.
Well, and we kind of knew with Thug that she basically just needed to not get involved in a bunch of grappling exchanges. That as long as that's not what happened, that she was going to be able to get through that. So obviously she was more than able to do that. Matt, your opinion, good sir?
Yes. When we were originally talking, I thought that if Rose was going to do it, it was probably because she was going to use her length to kind of pick her apart on the feet, and then maybe she would find a submission in the scramble following that. That's pretty much what happened. Like I said, yeah, but it was surprising to see that head kick, just rattling power. And really, I think it just came back to Waterson. She's a former champion at 105 in atomweight. I think that size and that scrappiness really came back to haunt her in this fight. Unfortunately, to my chagrin, there was a little team I had on DraftKings. If Waterson would have just won by any margin, would have been the number 1 team in the world. So I was a little upset by that, but hats off to Rose Namajunas for being an absolute monster. That's pretty much all I can say about that fight.
She's my boo thing, man. I think she is absolutely. Everyone's obsessed with Waterson. I think Rose Namajunas is just absolutely stunning. So
and in a G.I. Jane sort
of
way.
and also she has this like little like ghetto tinge. Like when she was talking, you're just the perfect amount of ghetto. There's like a little bit of ghetto there, and I like it, and I appreciate it.
The Thug is the perfect nickname.
It is, man. Like it's just a little bit there, and you're like, I like it.
Man, I think she might have a better chance of beating Joanna than Andrade. Especially,
you think so? Interesting.
Especially if she comes through a fight, but she has to beat. I guess nobody. I guess. I mean, that's pretty much the last person.
Oh, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah. So she's gonna fight unless she has to get through Gadela or something again. I mean, that'll be the only.
I don't think so.
The only thing, but
I think they'll put her on ice. They'll put her on ice.
Joanna's beaten Gadela twice, so I mean it's But yeah, give her 6-month training camp. Another fight's worth of footage of Joanna fighting. Kind of a Muay Thai grappler in Andrade if she beats Andrade. And I don't expect that fight to be super easy. She kind of struggled against Gadela. She even got dropped by Kowalkiewicz.
Yep. So
there's some precedent it could be a tough fight, although I do think she could at least win 3 of the 5 rounds and retain that belt. But man, if Rose keeps that up on the feet like that, with that scrappiness on the ground, Joanna's given up takedowns. She's given up negative positions on the ground before, and she's shown a propensity to get dropped. She got dropped by Claudia and Kowalkiewicz in a row, so she's not untouchable.
Yeah.
And man, Rose is really starting to put it together to dismantle Waterson so easily without really ever being threatened.
It was, I obviously thought Namajunas was going to win the whole time, as we talked about. I did not expect that, though. I mean, she definitely came out.
No, it was a step up.
Yeah, she came out looking. I thought it was going to be close, and that's kind of where I was. I did not, by any way, not even going to sit here and pretend like I thought she was going to walk through Waterson, because that's definitely not how I was looking at it.
Oh yeah, she just dismantled her.
It's incredible,
bit by bit.
Anything you want to add, Dave?
The only other piece that I really enjoy when Rose fights is I think that her and Pat Barry, you know, her corner, I don't know if they're married. I think they might be married now, but anyway, it's just their relationship. And you could see the separation when it's like fight time come on, but then like right when it's done, you could see it like come back together. And I don't know, there's just some couples that are kind of cool when you see that dynamic going on in such a crazy ass atmosphere. You know, I that's just a piece that I always think is kind of cool, like Alvy and his wife. And yeah, you know, anyway, it's kind of an interesting part that maybe nobody ever cares about. And I don't know why I do, but there you go.
Right. I guess the only question here is, anybody have an opinion? I mean, I guess I'll start with Matt. Michelle Watterson, but where does she go now?
Oh, I mean, there's plenty of places, you know, she can go.
Yeah.
Plenty of people she can fight. Give her Calderwood.
Okay, so I guess what I was asking is kind of what tier, you know, what tier do we give her now? I would say Rose is a tier
fight,
1.
so.
Rose is a tier 1. So kind of what do we go to a tier 2? Do we drop down to a tier 3?
Yeah, Joanne Calderwood just lost to Andrade. I mean, they're both coming off losses in title eliminator matches. It makes perfect sense to me. She's a bit smaller than Calderwood, but I mean, hey, it's, you know, it is what it is. You know, that's kind of where they're at.
Okay. Dave?
Yeah, I don't think she falls. Yeah, I don't think she falls far away. I'm that kind of person. If you give me a 1 or a 2 or a 3 box, like I want 1.5, I want 2.5. So I would say like a 1.5. You know, I mean, she's not falling far away, and I you know, fans love her. She is one of those kind of favorites, and so I love the Calderwood idea. That's a great one. I can't think of another, you know, girl to give her, but give her someone, and I think everyone would be happy.
Awesome. All right, moving on down the card. We have 2 more fights on the main card here. Robert Whittaker, Ronaldo Souza. Another wow.
This is so good.
Yeah, just an absolute wow. Kudos to Robert Whittaker for being able to get that done. I doubted the man. I think I got a little too overhyped on Souza, but it's just like, man, Souza has beaten the who's who, you know, and the only fights he's losing are against, again, the who's who. So Robert Whittaker just firmly cemented himself in that kind of cluster F of a 205 up top there, or sorry, of a cluster F of the 185 we have up there. You know, I'm not really sure who he fights next. He obviously doesn't go, you know, directly for the title or anything unless someone drops out and he fills in. So my guess is you're going to see Robert Whittaker fighting a Yoel at some point here, especially if Bisping does follow through with this GSP fight. You might see Whittaker Yoel, which would be just an awesome fight on multiple levels. And I would actually kind of favor Robert Whittaker there. So yeah, this is interesting. Interesting little shakeup here that I think a lot of people were not expecting. Dave, I'll start with you. Thoughts on this fight?
Yeah, I think what's crazy about this fight was, I mean, Jacare Souza, you say he's beaten the who's who. I mean, the guy he was on this tremendous streak, loses to Yoel, beats Vitor. I mean, he does the crocodile thing. I mean, he's just this. His striking's gotten better. He's fun to watch. He's so talented. He was in that title talk. It's like, oh, Jacare, oh, you know, all these middleweights to pick from, and it wasn't even really very loud that Jacare's fighting on the card. It went under the radar for how big he's supposed to be. I don't know if I'm kind of not feeling that. It got shown like, hey, man, here's this tremendous middleweight. And, you know, Robert Whittaker, I loved him on Tough, and he's done awesome since moving to middleweight. I mean, the guy fought at welterweight and did awesome on the show on Tough as the welterweight. So, anyways, to go to middleweight and be doing what he just did, especially against Jacare, where he pressured him, he was nonstop. He got out of positions that Jacare, you know, could have found some leverage. So I was glued to the TV when that one was going down, because Whitaker, he's kind of wild. I mean, he's not like this amazingly technical striker, but the guy will strike, and he stands there, and he is safe in places that, like I said, I mean, Jacare might have had the advantage, grabs a leg or grabs his body, I mean, even just a clinch with him. And Whitaker was still able to take it where he wanted to be and where he felt advantageous. So, man, it was an awesome fight. Good for Robert Whitaker. And that just made him, I mean, that just put his name there, except for, like Matt said, this show had no ratings. So if only us three know about it, why in the hell would Robert Whitaker be put in this contention? So I don't know. I feel like it's this amazing fight went very much under the radar when it needs to be a lot. It should have been a lot bigger. But he did great, man. I was blown away. I was really impressed.
Matt?
Yeah, dude, it was incredible. Once again, I personally was a little upset by the outcome. Was in a very prime position to make a good boatload of cash if Souza had come through on this one, but unfortunately he did not. Tim Elliott was just rocking everything for, I know, both Kyle and I's teams that night, and Souza kind of hurt us both a little bit, but just an incredible performance by Robert Whitaker. I can't escape the feeling that Jacare just really didn't take the matchup seriously enough. Didn't really come in with the correct game plan to kind of press his advantages. Maybe he thought he'd have an easier time with the dude, and he just did not at all. He got lit up by that jab all night, and man, that just head kick that was part of the finishing series was incredible. I'm kind of feeling like they're not going to give Whitaker the booking that he might be due here, just based on, like we were talking about, the ratings and the not being known factor. What I would like to see, maybe him headline a card down in Australia against like Christoph Joko, and kind of really be an eliminator for that next in line to the top 5 kind of match. Because I see a log jam of where Luke Rockhold kind of needs to fight Romero, and you got to figure out what's going on with that Weidman Musasi situation. So that's all kind of locked up. So that maybe that Joko is a good matchup for him to get right back in there and get back to winning. Because this is just an incredible victory, and you can't call him anything other than one of the best in the world now. I mean, clearly.
When does Johnny Hendricks fight Tim Boetsch? Is he fighting? It's Tim Boetsch, right?
Yes, I believe he is going to fight Tim Boetsch.
When does he fight Tim Boetsch?
It's a couple months from now. Like I said, the most open person would be like Joko. I mean, the dude's undefeated, I think, since he had like one loss like a while back in his UFC career. But I know he just beat Talis Ladies. Talis Ladies was like, ranked 6th or 7th, maybe 8th at the time. So I know he's right up in that same positioning. So, I mean, I see that as a great matchup. Maybe down in even New Zealand. For the Kiwi fans of Whitaker, give him a payday, let him headline a card, get another win there, and then he's straight into a title contender matchup if he wins by knockout there, in my opinion.
Yeah, he's not fighting. Yeah, they're not fighting till June. I was gonna say that would be an interesting one. Johnny Hendricks goes through Boetsch, and he wants that race to the title because he didn't have much time left. He fights Robert Whitaker, loses, and then retires. That would be that sounds like what like the progress of Johnny Hendricks would be.
Yeah, potentially. No, I think maybe they take it easy on Johnny Hendricks. Like, if he beats Tim Boetsch, you'd think that they'll give him somebody not quite as deadly as Robert Whitaker. Gosh.
Yeah. Hopefully not.
You would hope. I like to see him feed Whitaker. Like, he got this great win when he wasn't excited. You don't have to throw him right back into deep water. Like, let him ride it, have another matchup that's pretty winnable. Build his stock, build a brand around him in Australia, because I think Mark Hunt is about done. And so they need Whitaker.
Yeah, they need a guy to get all that New Zealand people that Hunt's getting. Yeah, and Whitaker
Matthews
could be that guy. Yeah, Jake Matthews is, just done. He was extremely overhyped.
Yes. So Whitaker's that guy.
Whitaker's the guy, and he's proving he's not overhyped. He's underhyped at this point. So
sure.
Yeah. Dave, is there anything you want to add, we'll get to our last fight on the main card / first fight on the main card?
Yeah, and just the only other thing to think about is whenever you think about a middleweight champ, you got to start like actually picturing it's GSP possibly. It's the weirdest thing in the world.
Yeah.
You're talking about Whitaker and like who he'd fight, and you're like Bisping, belts, and then we got to talk about GSP in this now. It's
right.
So weird.
Or do we? I mean, are we even going to see him? I guess that's something we should talk about in the news episode tomorrow. But yeah, I mean, I don't know what's going on with that whole thing. All right, let's talk about Canelo Stevens. I'm going to be very honest with you. I did not know a whole lot about this fight, although I did kind of think Jeremy Stevens won. Not as emphatically as I thought Bobby Green won. I thought Bobby Green beat Magomedov in real time. I have not rewatched the fight, so I don't know. I can't be positive. But in real time, I thought Bobby Green won like decisively. And then Jeremy Stevens, I leaned him when we were all said and done. But anyway, a lot of people say that Canelo won. I could definitely buy it. And I didn't know a whole lot about him. I know about him now. I mean, that's a good little win to add to your resume when you didn't really have a whole lot on there to begin with. So that's not a bad win at all. Good for Canelo. I'm interested to see what he can do in this featherweight division. I guess the question I have, again, this is kind of what I want to do with this main card, which is where do these guys go now? Now kind of Jeremy Stevens is now on a 2-fight skid. And I mean, granted, the skid was Frankie Edgar, but then, he also lost to Canelo, who nobody even really knew who he was, to include a lot of people in the betting community. Guys who are very intimate with the sport really didn't know anything about this guy, and that's who Jeremy Stevens just lost to. I mean, that doesn't bode very well for your brand. So, Matt, we'll start with you here. Talk about the fight. What did you know about Canelo going into it, and kind of where should Jeremy Stevens go?
Okay, well, I will say late on Friday night, I just started digging deep into Canelo's footage, and I really liked what I saw. And I started thinking about the fact that this was, an undefeated dude who was only 27 years old. Like, every single one of his fights on his record in Brazil had been against a legitimate fighter. I heard a statistic during one of his matches that the brink of competition was something like 200 wins and 90 losses for his whole record compiled, which is really, really rare for somebody from the Brazilian scene. So when I thought about all that, and then he also runs his own gym. Like, he took time off to heal from injuries and open up his own gym. And at the age of 27, when I see all that, and then you're accepting matchups against people like Stevens and Tukagov, and he came in on 2 weeks' notice, against Tom Ninamaki, who at the time was like 27-7 was the dude's record. And so, yeah, I mean, it was just a really kind of surprising, sneaky kind of record that I was intrigued by. And then I looked into his footage, and he had really, really slick striking. And so I was not surprised to see him do to Stevens what he did. I think what sealed the deal for me and what definitely convinced me of his victory was those 2 takedowns and his advantage in the grappling, as well as just being more slick and outlanding Stevens on the feet in pretty much every round. I was impressed all around. I think maybe you have him fight the winner of the Jason Knight matchup. I forget who Jason Knight's fighting coming up here soon. I think it's on his next card, but like the winner of that fight would be kind of.
Oh, that's a good one too. That's a good one too.
I forget who is Jason Knight fighting coming up.
I don't know, but yeah,
he's fighting at 211. I just saw that because he's on FMR.
It's a good match,
and they just made a post about him. I got it. I'll look it up, guys. You keep talking.
Oh, okay. But yeah, so I think that could be a good.
Oh, it's Chad Skelly. Chad Skelly.
Yes, Chad Skelly.
Yes.
So that'd be a perfect fight. Ooh, I'd love to see, especially if Skelly wins, because Carnero is like undefeated, and he has all of his wins are by decision or submission. I believe he's a black belt in jiu-jitsu. He's also lanky. That would be a very fun matchup. Either one of those guys, because Jason Knight's super scrappy himself and really fun on the feet, and also has a ton of wins by submission. So that would be, really
he has 10 wins.
To determine which of those guys.
Jason Knight has 10 wins by submission 2 by KO, 4 by decision.
So perfect. I love to see him fight one of those dudes because he's had enough tough competition. Tukukov, and then beating Jeremy Stevens like this. I mean, dude, let the guy take a break and fight somebody right on his level. He doesn't need to keep shooting up the depth chart that quickly, in my opinion.
Dave?
Yeah. Well, I'm actually more impressed than anything that really happened too much in this fight was actually Matt's analysis of, researching the, guy. What's his name? What do you guys call him? Meccano?
Well, yeah. So his real name is Renato Canero, but he goes by Renato. Yeah, Renato Canero, but he goes by like Moicano.
Okay, Moicano. Right. Yeah. Anyways, you guys were calling him Carnero, no?
That's his last name.
Okay, gotcha. Because I always see Moicano. Anyways, that's just I always love when people like do all that research and and it speaks so knowledgeably from that memory bank because I can do that too. But it's like I sit there and look it up. I got my notes in front of me, so. Anyways, I was more entertained by that, like hearing about Moicano here. And
well, what's incredible is that Matt's doing that while driving down the road and has no way of looking anything up because he's not connected to the internet. So that's pretty incredible, man.
Yeah, very much so. But yeah, I mean, we worked pretty hard at this. Kyle and I have both been at this for a while, so comes the territory, I guess. But thank you.
Well, I think that goes to show, like, if you're going to go do some, because it's DraftKings, right?
Yes.
And betting.
Oh, I was just going to say, I mean, it shows the knowledge going into it. So when I do hear people speak about DraftKings, I do put something into what they're saying. It was just, and you kind of affirmed that.
Thanks, man.
Well, there we go.
It was a good fight. I was happy to see him perform up to his ability. So it was good.
All right. Now, as far as the rest of the card is going to go, we're going to skip around. Let me just tell you, your submission winners were Johnson and Whitaker. They both got $50,000 bonuses for their submissions or for their finishes rather. The fight of the night. This one is, I don't think you guys are going to be able to guess it. Do you guys want to try to maybe guess what the fight of the night was?
Oh, maybe the fight of the year contender, Elliott versus Smolka.
Yeah. What an incredible fight, man. It makes me, I'm not as sad for Smolka knowing that was the fight that just happened, that he's probably going out on. And, I'm happy that he got $50,000 to put in his pocket. Smolka, friend of the podcast. I had him on the show. I was very concerned when I talked to him that he mentally wasn't in a great place, and I've ever since then believed that he's not mentally in a great place. I really hope that he takes this loss and he gets a mental coach. Reach out to Jeff Jordan over at Fight Brain. Reach out to even a guy like Lutrition, who does obviously nutrition, but also kind of deals with the mental aspect of it as well. Reach out to some of these guys because I really think that would dramatically change Louis Smolka's game. We've seen flashes of greatness from him, and not only have we seen flashes of greatness from him. I mean, God, just look at this fight. Right? Look what he was able to kind of withstand and get around. He's also 25 years old. He was born in 1991. He has a long future ahead of him. And it would be criminal for him to not reach his full potential because of some mental blocks and some I really want to see him talk to a mental coach. I really the guy needs to do therapy, a psychologist, something. Because there's too much talent there, and I think it's being wasted by the fact that he is, he's struggling in that game. So that's my piece. But yeah, fight was absolutely incredible. From a DraftKings perspective, if you didn't have Tim Elliott, you didn't win very much money because he had like 175 points, which is absurd. Anyone who plays DraftKings knows what we're talking about. That is just like, holy shit. I've never personally had anyone score that many points ever that I've seen. So just an absurd amount of takedowns and passes and yeah. So an incredible fight on a whole bunch of different fronts. Dave, do you also think this is a fight of the year contender, kind of early contender?
I don't know about fight of the year, but it was really entertaining. I know I saw on my Twitter timeline a little tiny bit about when this one was going on. It seemed like people were really pissed at Smolka's performance, I guess. Like, that was the vibe I got, was people were feeling like he didn't do a good job. And again, I was following a live event, like right in front of me, and I wasn't following the live show too close, but that was the vibe I got. So when I went home to watch it, I felt like there were spots where like you kind of felt like maybe there could have been more, or
what you were seeing was the majority, not the majority maybe, but a gigantic cluster of the betting community. First of all, Smolka is a really personable guy. So he's gone on a whole bunch of podcasts. He's friends with some of the guys with the bigger podcasts in the MMA world, like Half of the Battle and all that. And those guys were riding the Smolka train pretty hard. And I don't think a lot of these guys were seeing the writing on the wall, and something that, again, Matt's always the guy who vouches for me. I mean, Matt, I called you 2 months ago. What did I say?
Kyle called me 2 months ago when I was in Las Vegas, and he said, "Sir, I'm going to need you to call up that strange reverse mortgage company you see advertised on TV. Place a reverse mortgage on your house, go to Las Vegas, and put all of that money on Tim Elliott, because he is going to beat Louis Smolka 100% certain." That is what you said 2 months ago.
And I just think people were not seeing the writing on the wall. Smolka's mental game is completely gone. There's nothing there. And I don't know why. I don't know what it is, but he has zero mental toughness at this point. And until that changes, until he fixes that, he's not going to recover from this. So, but yeah. Anyways, Dave, I'm going to let you finish. But that's what you were witnessing. I think you were sensing the frustration from the community, going, "What the hell are you doing? Like, why? Like, this is the guy you're supposed to be able to beat."
Well, I mean, he was supposed to beat Brandon Moreno.
Yep.
And that was.
And Ray Borg.
Impressed by Moreno, but right. But I was going to chime in with small mental game on MMA Junkie Radio. They were on the show with Smolka and I believe Russell Doan, and they were talking about training. And I believe it was Smolka maybe had a fight coming up or passed recently, and was talking about how he does not check in during training. I mean, he's like mentally not there. He hates it. It's just like he's so immature about it, I guess, was kind of what they were saying. And then when it's fight time, man, he turns it on. There are some guys, I guess maybe they like that, like Cerrone. He definitely plays the part that's him. Like, that's his style. But he's going into training killing it, I bet. You know what I mean? He's going hating it in terms of like he'll half-ass it and be immature about it. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm not there. I don't know their specific training 100%. That's just the vibe I get. But he presents himself as this free fun and all that kind of vibe. But that's an interesting piece to a Smolka is. And that was actually something I was going to say was the mental piece was, if you hate the training and you don't commit like that, maybe it's hard to fully commit and put yourself mentally into the fight, even though, maybe that's your path. Like, oh, you can turn it on fight day. But maybe not always. So maybe that's, that was just something I was thinking.
Yeah. Matt?
Yeah, man. I thought it was an incredible fight. Definitely just I think people are talking about a fight in the sense that there's only a couple grappling matches in history that have had that much activity. Just takedowns, passes, reversals, both guys going at it. Just really kind of a cool grappling, just fun display. Then kind of get the cat fan excited about grappling. And I think that's what was interesting about the fight. Just on a more general perspective, and then on a betting perspective, people are on the Smolka train. In Vegas, if you're looking at DraftKings price versus the Vegas odds, Smolka, would have been one of the more attractive plays on DraftKings because people were seeing Tim Elliott's propensity to sometimes lose fights, but at the end of the day, if you would have checked into LoudMouth Network over here and listened to our podcast. There were little clues the whole time that Smolka's mindset might not have been in it. I believe you interviewed him or at least talked to him before the Borg fight. And, even there were little clues there. If he were to lose that fight, he might not be feeling so good. And does that recap with you, a month or two later and really kind of feels down about this match, with Elliott. That's when you called me. It's just because him personally to you, he didn't seem enthused about the opportunity to put his medal up against Tim Elliott, and you kind of just saw that in the matchup. And the animus that Dave was seeing on Twitter is people that bet on Smolka, they didn't see that fight inside of him in the same way that we didn't see that fight inside of Anthony Johnson last week. And it's just maybe a problem of motivation, like you said, mindset. So, yeah.
Alrighty. Let me look around. We obviously have to talk about Tom Duquesnoy real quick. An incredible showing. Patrick Williams has since said that he's going to be moving up to 145, to which I kind of responded, good luck. That seems like that's going to be a tough go for him. But this Tom Duquesnoy kid, man, he seems pretty legit. I mean, I don't really know. I want to say, I'm going to go through a couple more real quick, so we can wrap up. Anthony Smith with an incredible comeback. Matt mentioned that at the very beginning. I thought that was an absolutely incredible comeback for him. Andrew Sanchez is a tough dude, man, and good job to come back from that. And good job for Andrew Sanchez to be winning for most of the fight, too. I mean, that those kind of things happen, and they're sad, but it was a great fight. Good for him. Ashley Evans Smith is not very good. Just go ahead and get that out of the way. And she's not even as good as her record indicates because she got credit for a win that she doesn't have. And, kudos to Devin Clark for getting the win. Yeah, there's not really a whole bunch of more storylines. Really, it's Tom Duquesnoy and it's Anthony Smith's comeback. I mean, that was kind of the big storylines that are left here.
Well, I thought also something that I didn't really pick up on it. I normally watch a lot of the broadcasts on mute. I'm more entertained that way, I guess. But I was listening to this one because I guess I was alone, didn't have my Twitter. But when I'm watching the Cummings and Coy fight, and Cummings slaps on the sick triangle, right, and chokes him out, and
late stoppage.
I didn't feel like it was when I was watching it. Again, maybe I was in the haze, but I didn't feel like it was this crazy. I didn't feel like. I guess no. I was watching. I'm sorry, driving on Fight Pass, and I guess watching it. I wasn't feeling like he almost killed him. I mean, that's the vibe I got listening to. I listened to a couple of shows since then. I mean, it felt like, oh, he held it for so long, blah, blah, blah. Number one, that referee is terrible. Isn't that a Michael England or something? That guy's
every time I see him, I'm like, uh-oh, here we go.
Yeah, exactly. And I think he and Mazzagotti are just buddies, and the Mazzagotti School of Reffing. But it was at the time I didn't get the vibe. It was a bad situation. So Adder, if I missed that, maybe it was the distraction, I guess. But anyway, that was something talked about that I didn't really pick up on. So if we're looking for more storylines, there you go.
There you go. Any comment on Tom Duquesnoy or the comeback from Anthony Smith?
Yeah, I mean, Duquesnoy, for a minus 1,100 favorite, he was putting a couple more compromising spots than I would like to see.
Against a guy who really shouldn't have been able to do that to him.
Yeah, but the level of violence with which he responded to that negative positioning is something that I liked. And, dude, man, just these guys coming from BAMA, like DeCasey, Duquesnoy, some legitimate talent coming out of that organization, filtering its way over to here. So that's kind of cool. It's exciting to see. I like people from that European market come over and succeed, especially somebody from France where it's still illegal. So, man, if he can become a superstar and we could France and we can open up another European market, that could be nice. That could be very useful for the company. So I like to see that on that front. Anthony Smith, incredible comeback win. He's now 3-1 in his return run to the UFC and is just kind of putting together a record of being really scrappy and fun to watch. And then the Patrick Cummins thing, I guess people just were upset by it because they said that Nathan Coy was almost about to tap, and then just passed out. And then it took another 8 or 10 seconds.
Well,
for the
and
fight
then
to stop.
The problem, so when England goes to grab his hand, he does it in slow motion. He slowly reaches and then gently picks up his hand and then drops it. And then once nothing reacts, it takes him another second and a half to kind of react to it. Yeah, it was just a slow reaction. I mean, it wasn't, people are overreacting, but we're UFC fans, Dave. I mean, this is what we do. we overreact to shit.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell, too, it'd be one thing if Cummins was on bottom and, he was holding a guillotine when it's, you can clearly tell the guy, on top trying to fight your arms and stuff, and then he isn't. Yeah. You can tell he's passed out. But when you're, in pretty much, full mount or something, got an anaconda, I mean, I know this even from personal experience. I've choked out a person before, completely inadvertently. So I expected them fully to tap, and they just didn't tap. And then it took me a couple seconds to process that they were completely unconscious. So, in the adrenaline of the moment and being trained to go until the ref tells you to stop, I don't blame Cummins there. I mean, just horrible.
Oh, of course not.
Horrible reffing. When Brian Stan can see from cage side that the dude's unconscious, screaming "Stop the fight!" Just screaming at the guy. I think you should probably be able to figure it out.
Yeah,
it shouldn't be that hard. So maybe get that guy out of there. Let's not have
England's had multiple issues. He seems to be at the helm of a whole bunch of stuff. I do, real quick, I want to give... so starting from the bottom, working way up, I want to give a quick, literal recap of everything, just really, really quickly. Caitlin Vieira won a unanimous decision against Ashley Evans-Smith. Zach Cummins, as we were just talking about, submitted Nathan Coy in the first round. Anthony Smith, comeback victory, wound up getting a TKO in the third round. Devin Clark, pretty decisive decision against Jake Collier. I would say decisive decision. Aljamain Sterling, also a relatively decisive decision against Augusto Mendez. Tim Elliott, Luis Samoka, we already talked about that. Extremely good fight of the night, early contender for one of the better fights so far this year. Tim Elliott coming out the victor. Rashad Magomedov, eked by Bobby Green. I referred to this one earlier. I personally thought that Bobby Green won that fight in real time, but I have not rewatched it, so I don't know. But definitely eked by there. Tom Duquesnoy wound up getting the second round finish on Patrick Williams. As Matt was saying, Tom Duquesnoy was in a little bit of trouble there, but he responded and he threw some hellacious elbows, some elbows from hell. Alexander Volkov beat Roy Nelson again pretty decisively. Good for him. That's a huge win at this point. Roy Nelson has a name attached to him. Maybe Nelson's a little bit overhyped, but nevertheless, that was a big name. Good for him. And then we pretty much went through the entire main card. So, all right, Dave Madden, anything you want to add before we go?
I do not, man. You covered it. I had a great time watching it. I thought it was for a free one. I thought it was great, and picking at the numbers is something. It's a piece of data, but the people who follow MMA are going to follow it, and follow the UFC are going to follow it. But maybe is that a sign they're maybe cranking out too many shows? Maybe, because this was a pretty good card. So kind of frustrating. So many went under the radar.
Plug your stuff real quick, Dave. Tell us where to find you.
Oh, for sure. On Twitter, at Dave Madden. Let's throw an extra M in there to make MMA real clever. Facebook, Dave Madden. Check out the work I do out here in Northern California. It's at NorCalMixedMartialArts.com. A couple recent posts I made. One girl, she's an amateur fighter, and she just made this tweet about she was letting her bird go, and the dog caught it real quick and took off with it. And I mean, just millions of retweets and millions of views and millions. It was just kind of funny to see her reaction to it and her. And then, anyways, the event I was at, posting the results, and I think it's interesting. I make up the NorCal MMA's performance of the night, like who I think gets this and that, and the fighters. These were amateurs, and they oh man, I got fight of the night. And I was thinking, cool. They just seem so fired up about like getting, the award that I gave them. But anyway, cool. So anyway, man, that's where I'm at.
Matt?
Yeah, man. It was a great card. It was a good time. I love giving downs. I think with Demetrius's numbers, maybe it's kind of like people say about presidency. Like it takes a little time for the work of one guy to sink in. So maybe Demetrius puts in all this exciting work, gets these finishes, goes on, and maybe his numbers will start peaking up. People will have some interest in him. He's had a few exciting fights in a row, got a nice finish here. And as long as, they keep selling good gate attendance numbers. I know it was a sellout in the arena, and they made a lot of money in the arena, so I think it should be fine. And I the card next week, and UFC 211 will be fantastic, and I can't wait to those cards to you guys after they're done.
Fantastic. All right, guys, you can find the podcast on SoundCloud, iTunes, Google Play, basically wherever you listen to a podcast, wherever you're listening to it right now is perfectly fine with me. Find me on Twitter, find me on Facebook, find me on Instagram at LoudMouth MMA and or LoudMouth MMA Podcast. I think that's what we are on Instagram. Great card. I echo everybody's sentiments. So thanks for listening. Until we meet again.
The host of the LoudMouth MMA podcast, Kyle Steele. Executive producer and head of marketing, Philip Herman. Today's episode was mixed by Danny Adams, myself. Special thanks to the MMA prophet, Sean I. Has, Dave Madden, Keith from the MMA Takeover, and the Voball. To learn more about the LoudMouth MMA podcast, please visit loudmouthmma.com.